Welcome to Charleston, 1868. A city still bearing the scars of a war that refused to end. Streets cobblestone slick with rain. Shadows stretching long beneath flickering lamplight. And somewhere just beyond sight, something moves. A whisper of footsteps. Not yours, echoing along the old streets. You think you know this city? But the French Quarter, the alleys behind the market, they remember. They remember the ones who vanished, the ones who never returned. Before we step further, pause. Take a breath. Listen. The streets are patient, but they remember every step, every cry, every disappearance. And tonight, you are part of their witness. Smoke from burned-out plantations drifts faintly on the wind, the scent of charred cane lingering in the damp air. And they say when the fog rolls in thick, the spirits walk. Not as memories, not as shadows, but as echoes, as warnings. A black woman appears at the corner, shawl clutched tightly, eyes scanning the darkness. She is alone, yet she is not. The streets hold stories of fear, of vengeance, of grief. And if you linger, if you stay, you might hear them too. Voices from homes long abandoned. Footsteps that fall where no feet should tread. Whispers of names, spoken softly, urgently, welcome to the city where the past never sleeps, where history bleeds into legend, and legend bleeds into the living. February, 1868. Charleston awoke under a brittle winter sun, the harbor water gray and restless, waves lapping at the piers with a hollow, almost human sigh. The city scarred, still bleeding from a war that refused to end. Bricks chipped, shutters hanging crookedly, streets slick with frost melting into mud. Smoke from coal fires rising from chimneys, curling into the sky like ghostly fingers, carrying the scent of soot, of charred sugar, of old forgotten embers. The French Quarter, heart of the old city. Wrought iron balconies curling like blackened vines. Windows cracked, doors ajar, the light of lamps flickering, casting long, narrow shadows across cobblestones, shadows that reached, stretched, like fingers seeking something lost, something remembered, or perhaps something that should never have been. Merchants tried to open their shops, crates of fabric, sacks of coffee beans, barrels of molasses rattling over the cobblestones. Yet the echoes of absence remained. Whispers in the corners. A child who disappeared. A man who vanished. And every time the fog rolled in thick, locals swore the spirits walked, gliding silently between market stalls, brushing past bodies, unseen, but felt. Reconstruction had settled over Charleston, a shadow that clung, uneven, awkward. Soldiers patrolled the streets, some in blue, some in gray, carrying papers, rifles, hope or suspicion. Freedmen's bureau offices opened, desks cluttered with petitions reports, lists of the missing, runaway slave ads nailed to poles, ink faded, margins curling, fate unknown, repeated in newspapers, whispered in homes, muttered in churches. Each repetition layering memory over memory, fact over legend. People moved cautiously, black men and women, children clinging to their parents, eyes wide, scanning alleys and corners, stepping lightly over broken boards, pausing to listen, always listening, to the wind, to whispers, to something else, something patient, waiting, watching, calculating, remembering. The plantation beyond the Ashley River, burned-out remnants stretching toward the sky. Cane fields twisted, blackened, poking through frost, overgrown, carrying the weight of what was lost. Inside the remains of the overseer's house, footprints pressed into the dirt, small, heavy, deliberate, belonging to no one alive, or at least to no one human. And still, each step told a story, one that mingled fear with grief, despair with hope, fact and folklore dancing together. St. Michael's Church rose above the rooftops, its bell towers silent, pews scarred, floorboards worn, yet voices still sang. Spirituals, sometimes trembling with fear, sometimes soaring to the rafters, sometimes punctuated by a whisper, a gasp, a sound that was not prayer. And from these walls, from the shadows, stories emerged of those who had disappeared, of the freedmen struggling, of soldiers reporting phantom regiments marching through the streets. The ink of reports faded, fate unknown, yet whispers persisted. We saw them, in the corners, eyes wide, silent, on Market Street. The scent of molasses, of roasted coffee, of wet timber, mixing with decay. The noise of the city came in uneven waves, horse hooves clattering, wagon wheels creaking, voices bargaining, and beneath it all, a pulse, a rhythm, as if the city itself remembered, absorbing every secret, every crime, every act of courage, every act of cruelty. The fog rolled in from the harbor, thickening, concealing, revealing, teasing the senses, minds, hearts, the streets themselves breathing, alive with memory, alive with the residue of sorrow and anger, alive with the footsteps of those who had vanished, and those who still walked. In the alley behind King Street, a woman paused, shawl clutched tightly, bundle pressed to her chest, bread, a keepsake, a memory. She was not alone, yet she was, eyes darting into the mist. The corners shifted, the wind carried a sweet, burnt scent, and in that moment, she swore, a figure, thin, pale, moving, not quite solid, a presence familiar and unfamiliar. The city held these stories, every brick, every board, every shutter, every alley, a witness, a chronicler, holding fragments of fact, fragments of folklore. The smoke from burned plantations mingled with the fog, the distant sound of waves, and the faint, almost imperceptible footsteps of those who had disappeared, carrying their stories, their warnings, their grief, forward into the streets, into the hearts of those who dared to walk. Charleston, 1868. A city on the threshold of memory and legend, where the line between the living and the dead blurred, where fact and folklore intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree, and everywhere you looked, you could feel the pulse, the heartbeat of the city itself. The Market Street clock ticked. Lamplight flickered, shadows danced. And from somewhere deep in the French Quarter, a whisper, a sigh, a warning, a story waiting to be heard, for those who would listen, for those who would remember. And so Charleston waited, patient, knowing that the streets would not forget, that the fog would not forget, that the living and the dead were intertwined, fact layered with folklore, reality interlaced with legend, the pulse of history echoing along every alley, every corner, every cobblestone, until the past and present became indistinguishable. And you, the listener, the witness, We're about to step into this rhythm, to breathe it, to hear it, and perhaps to feel it. In the dim morning light of Charleston, the streets appeared empty, yet they were far from silent. Behind a shuttered window, a child peered out, wide eyes, trying to make sense of the shadows moving along the cobblestones. She had heard stories, whispers from her mother, tales of people who disappeared without a trace. Men, women, children. Swept away by something the city itself seemed to hide. Fact records tell us of young black children vanishing from neighborhoods, documented in the pages of the local newspapers. Fate unknown, they read. A phrase repeated like a refrain, in columns that seemed too small to hold the weight of the loss. The ink faded, the edges of the pages curling. Yet the story remained, persistent, unavoidable, haunting. And folklore insisted that the missing children were seen later, wandering the French Quarter at night, silent, watching, their eyes glowing faintly, reflecting the lamplight in ways that made you shiver. In the heart of the city, a man named Elijah, a former sailor, now working as a porter, moved carefully along Market Street, his coat patched, his boots worn through at the heels. He carried letters, parcels, news from one family to another, but he also carried the stories of the city, the whispered warnings of where not to walk, of who not to meet. And he often said, "The streets are alive, and they remember, they watch, they wait." Elijah's testimony was recorded in a small Freedmen's Bureau journal, dated February 12, 1868. I saw her, a woman, moving along the alley, alone, yet not alone, eyes wide, staring into the fog. I called out. She vanished, as if the mist swallowed her. I do not know if she was alive or a spirit. But I remember, and I write, so that others may heed. The words, stark, clinical, yet they carried the weight of fear, the tremor of disbelief, the pulse of a city trying to reconcile fact and legend. And the folklore layer carried stories older than Charleston itself, handed down by word of mouth, by neighbors who had survived war, by elders who had remembered the days of plantations. The Lady of the Mist, they called her, appearing at twilight, dressed in white, walking along the river, her feet never touching the ground, gliding over the cobblestones, stopping at doors, peering through windows, sometimes weeping, sometimes smiling, a warning or a promise. No one could say. Elijah recalled another night, when he delivered letters to a household on Church Street. The fog was thick, curling along the edges of the shutters. A faint figure appeared, motionless, watching. He froze. The letter fell. He could hear nothing, but he felt it. A presence, cold, patient. And then, the figure faded, leaving only the smell of burnt sugar, a whisper of footsteps, and the faint echo of a lullaby, sung by no one alive. Historical documents corroborate similar accounts. A young man named Samuel, enlisted briefly in a local regiment, reported seeing phantom soldiers in the streets, marching silently, uniforms tattered, muskets slung, eyes fixed. They moved as if carrying out a duty that had long passed. His report was dismissed, filed under imaginary sightings, yet letters sent home to family mention it. A foggy night, the sound of drums, the soft murmur of voices, calling names that belonged to the dead. Meanwhile, in the alleys near the docks, Mary, a laundress, Young, resilient, her hands raw from scrubbing, carried the scent of soap and river water wherever she walked. She claimed she had seen a child, small, translucent, standing at the corner of King and Broad Streets, humming softly, a melody she recognized, a song her grandmother had sung in the fields. And when she approached, the child vanished, leaving only the faint smell of cane, burned and sweet, lingering in the air. Fact Layer shows multiple corroborations, reports filed with the police, anecdotal evidence in newspapers, letters preserved by the Bureau, each account strange, terrifying, impossible to reconcile, each bearing the mark of reality, yet tinged with something else, something that could not be explained. Folklore insisted on embellishment, or perhaps it insisted on truth disguised. The Lady of the Mist, the wandering children, the phantom soldiers, all repeating patterns, motifs, echoes of a history too painful to fully acknowledge. One story layered upon another, until the streets themselves seemed conscious, aware, capable of remembering each sorrow, each injustice, each small miracle, each disappearance. In a small home on Trod Street, an elderly couple, former enslaved people, whispered to each other, recounting the night their son disappeared, the newspaper calling him fate unknown. And yet, the boy's laughter lingered in the corners, the creaking of floorboards, the swish of wind through broken shutters, every sound a memory, every shadow a presence, the house itself alive with his absence. Meanwhile, the city's merchants recorded shipments, crates of sugar barrels of molasses, sacks of rice. Yet in some ledgers, a note in faded ink. Goods moved, but a child missing. A clerk scratched out the entry, the missing accounted for, but only in whispers. Fact colliding with folklore, ledger meeting legend, the tangible and intangible intertwined. Elijah walked the streets again. Dusk approaching, lamps flickering, shadows elongating, the fog thickening. He paused at the corner, saw her, the woman in the shawl, a figure moving, hesitant, uncertain, eyes reflecting lamplight, a shadow among shadows. She vanished, leaving only the memory, the smell of smoke and burnt sugar, a whisper, "Do not forget, do not forget." Children played in the courtyards, unaware, or pretending, of the stories. Yet some would stop, gaze toward an alley, squint, whisper, "Did you see her?" And those who had never spoke aloud, not for fear, but because speaking would make it real, and reality was already crowded with the past, crowded with things that should not walk, yet walked nonetheless. The streets themselves, a living record, every cobblestone, every brick, every shuttered window, a witness, absorbing echoes, layering fact and folklore, the stories of those lost, those who vanished, those who lingered, the city holding them all, keeping them, preserving them. And if one walked slowly, listened carefully, one could hear the rhythm, the pulse of Charleston, beating under fog and lamplight, under shadow and silence, under the weight of history, under the breath of the disappeared. Night deepened. The river glimmered faintly, reflecting lanterns, reflecting shapes, some human, some not. Elijah paused. The Lady of the Mist glided past, unnoticed by others, brushing against the edge of a doorway, a whisper, a warning, a story, left behind, and the city, patient, absorbed it, remembering, always remembering. As fact met folklore. As history bled into legend, as legend bled into the streets, and the streets bled into memory. Charleston, 1868. A city alive with voices. Voices of the living. Voices of the vanished. Voices that would not be silenced. And you, walking through these words, these sentences, these echoes, are beginning to hear them too. The fog rolled thicker that evening, wrapping the French Quarter in a gray, viscous blanket. Lanterns flickered, their light spilling onto slick cobblestones. And somewhere in the alleys behind the market, something stirred, a rhythm, subtle, deliberate, like footsteps. Yet no one walked. Reports from the Freedmen's Bureau, sparse formal clinical, describe similar nights. The 14th of February, 1868. A young boy disappeared from his home on Church Street. Fate unknown, the report read. The ink smudged, perhaps by damp air, or perhaps by hurried, trembling hands. Neighbors swore they saw a small figure wandering the alley, too pale, too quiet, too deliberate. And when anyone approached it, simply vanished, leaving only the faint scent of burnt cane, lingering, persistent. Across town, a black laundress named Clara. She had worked the same streets for years, folding clothes, carrying bundles of wet linen. One night, returning home, noticed a figure in the shadows. A young man silent standing at the corner of King and Broad Streets, eyes fixed, a stare that seemed to pierce through fog. She called his name. Nothing. He moved, yet did not. A shadow gliding along the edges of lamplight. She felt the air chill, and when she blinked, he was gone. No trace, just a whisper of cloth, and the lingering scent of charred sugar. Fact layer shows other similar cases. Samuel, a soldier from a local regiment, reported to his superiors seeing phantom soldiers marching along Market Street, uniforms tattered, muskets slung, faces gaunt, eyes vacant, marching in cadence. Yet when officers investigated, no one was there. His report filed under imaginary sightings. Yet letters to family mentioned drums heard at night, voices calling names of the long dead. A haunting, official yet unverifiable. Meanwhile, in a narrow alley near the docks, Mary, a young child, had vanished. Her mother swore she had been holding her hand, only to find the child gone. Whispers among neighbors spoke of ghost children, wandering at night, appearing briefly at windows, looking for something or someone. No one knew, but all feared. And fact layer confirmed several missing children in the same district. Fate unknown, scribbled in the ledger of the local constable. A few blocks away, the old plantation remnants beyond the Ashley River, burned cane stalks poking through frost, the wind carrying faint ash, and the echoes of what had been. Night watchers reported seeing shadows moving among the ruins. Some thought them animals, others certain they had seen human figures, lingering, waiting, returning. The Lady of the Mist. Her legend whispered among elders, appearing along the river, white dress flowing, feet not touching the ground. She came and went, silently, leaving only scent and memory. Elijah, the former sailor, returned from delivering parcels. Night settling like a velvet curtain over Charleston. He paused, sensing movement in the mist. A figure, watching. He spoke. Nothing. Only the wind carried his words, and the figure shifted, almost imperceptibly. Closer, then vanished, leaving a faint glow, a whisper of melody, a song sung long ago in fields and cabins, a melody the city seemed to carry, beneath its streets, through its walls, beneath its fog. Each mini-case, layered upon the next, building tension. A city alive with incidents that could not be ignored. Fact layer meticulously recorded some, folklore carried others. Yet each contributed to the pulse, the rhythm, the underlying narrative. That Charleston was not merely a city of the living, but a city haunted, alive, remembering, exacting its silent toll. The reports grow stranger. An elderly couple on Trad Street swore they heard voices in their parlor, voices of children, calling out names, reciting nursery rhymes. Yet no one was there. The windows closed, the fire extinguished. Only the fog seeping through cracks, mingling with the voices. The ink on the police report noted, "Neighbors confirm. Sounds of unknown origin. No cause found. Fact undeniable, yet folkloric in nature." And the soldiers, more than one, reported waking in the dead of night, hearing drums, steps, commands whispered, the phantom regiment moving silently through alleys and streets, doors rattling, lamps swinging. Yet when inspected, nothing but the rhythm, the echo, persisted for hours or minutes or forever. No one could tell. The record only noting observations. Cannot be explained. Phenomenon repeated nightly. Fact colliding with legend, blending, shaping, breathing life into shadows. On Broad Street, a woman named Lydia, laundress and seamstress, walked home, her bundle heavy with linens. She felt eyes on her, cold, deliberate. She turned, a young girl, standing, translucent, humming softly. Melody recognizable, familiar. Her lips moving, yet sound barely audible. Lydia froze, heart pounding. When she blinked, the girl was gone. Only the faint scent of sugar, burnt, smoke lingering in the alley. Folklore layer validating fact layer. Witness testimony intersecting myth. By the river, the old docks, night thick with fog. Lanterns reflected in water, shadows moving, whispers carried by the wind. A sailor claimed to see a line of figures, marching silently, some young, some old, some familiar from memories, some unknown, yet all bound to the city, the river reflecting their movement, the fog concealing them, the witnesses swearing they were neither dream nor delusion. Fact layer, corroborated by multiple letters sent home, though largely dismissed by authorities. Even animals, cats, dogs, reacted, staring into alleys, ears flattened, fur raised, retreating, the city itself. A living witness. Fact and folklore intertwined, each incident building upon the other, a pattern emerging, a rhythm, escalating tension. The city's memory echoing through cobblestones, through shutters, through mist, through human consciousness. The candlelit homes, parlor windows casting squares of light on streets, flickering, tremulous. The residents uneasy, children asleep, blankets pulled over faces, parents whispering warnings. Do not walk too far. Do not call out. Do not look at the mist. Folklore reinforcing fact. Cautionary tales born of lived experience. Incidents documented. Shadows recorded. Disappearances noted. And as night deepened, Charleston became a city of incidents, each mini-case a thread, weaving a tapestry, some factual, some folkloric, all contributing to an atmosphere, a living, breathing narrative of fear, of wonder, of caution, and of memory that refused to be ignored. The alleys themselves, narrow, dark, slick, holding stories, echoing incidents, the rhythm of footsteps, the creak of boards, the flutter of shutters, every sound, every shadow, a reminder that the city was awake, alive with events both recorded and whispered, and every observer, every resident, became part of the story, either witness or participant, fact or folklore. By midnight, the fog thickened, shadows blurred, lamplight dimmed. The Lady of the Mist appeared, gliding silently along the river. Children vanished. Soldiers reported drums. A hush fell over the city, broken only by whispers. A breeze, a step, a sigh, a soft melody, carrying through alleys and streets, through homes and courtyards, a connection, a pattern, a pulse that tied all incidents together, rising, building, escalating tension, until the city itself seemed poised, holding its breath, waiting for the next event. And the fog, thick, impenetrable, carried stories from one incident to another, blending fact and folklore, the living and the vanished, a rhythm of fear and fascination. Each step forward, each witness, each report, escalating the sense of something greater, something unseen, yet profoundly real, something the city refused to release, until one could no longer distinguish what was real, what was legend, what was fact, and what was folklore. Charleston, 1868, the city of shadows, the city of memory, the city of incidents, rising, repeating, echoing, waiting for those who dared to walk its streets, to witness, to hear, to become part of the story. The alleys of Charleston, narrow, twisting, slick with winter rain, seemed almost alive, moving under the weight of shadows, each brick soaked, each stone bearing witness. And in this web of streets, a confrontation was about to unfold, small in scope, yet monumental in consequence. Fact tells us that in the 14th precinct, a group of freedmen had gathered, their faces tense, hands gripping what little possessions they carried, reports from the bureau, note petitions, claims for lost children, inquiries into disappearances, the language careful, restrained, request for assistance regarding fate unknown. They wrote, ink smudged by damp fingers, yet urgency bled through each line. Across the way, the local constable patrolled, baton in hand, lantern swinging, eyes darting, notes on his clipboard. A report of phantom soldiers, children vanished, shadows seen in alleys, fact layer meticulous, clinical. Yet the night itself seemed to mock these reports, folding them into the mist, swallowing them, leaving only traces. And then the fog thickened, rising from the harbor, curling around the gas lamps, around balconies, reaching into the courtyards, carrying the faint scent of burnt sugar, smoke, and something metallic, copper, the residue of past fires, past violence, the smell lingering in homes, in the noses of those who had lived, in the memory of the city. A young woman, Eliza, walked cautiously down King Street, shawl clutched tight, bundle of clothing pressed to her chest, her eyes sharp, scanning, always scanning. She had heard the stories of the Lady of the Mist, of vanished children, of phantom soldiers. Tonight she would witness her first confrontation, at the corner of King and Broad. Shadows coalesced, movement indistinct, lantern light flickering. A figure emerged, tall, thin, indistinct, eyes fixed, unblinking, and the hairs on Eliza's arms rose. She could feel the air shift, the rhythm of the city altered, fact and folklore colliding, the pulse quickening. The locals had long spoken of this corner, a locus, a place where events repeated, many cases intersecting, a microcosm of the city's haunted geography. Reports mention a merchant, Mr. Thompson, walking late at night, stopped by a figure in mist. Words exchanged, none recalled, only fear remembered. Ledger entries noting unidentified presence observed, disappears upon approach. The officers dismissed it, yet the story persisted. Eliza took a hesitant step forward. The figure moved in tandem, just enough, subtle, a shadow mirroring movement. Every step measured, deliberate. The fog thickened. A low whistle carried from the river, the echo bouncing off brick walls, sending shivers down the spine. She realized she was no longer alone. Fact layering folklore, history bleeding into legend. Nearby, a young boy had disappeared, a few streets over. Last seen playing near a barrel. Neighbors swore he was snatched, yet reports were vague, conflicting. Some noted footprints in the mud, small, delicate, not quite human. Others claimed to hear laughter, singing, drifting from alley to alley, the melody familiar, a nursery rhyme from plantations long gone, and yet twisted, distorted by memory, by fear, by the city. Eliza paused, feeling the tension, the rhythm, and then movement, closer, a whisper of silk, shawl brushing the edge of stone, the figure's eyes ghostly, impossibly pale, fixed on her. The pulse of the city quickened. She could feel it, the very streets vibrating, echoing, carrying the history of loss, of disappearance, of unfinished business. Fact Layer shows other such encounters. Mr. Elijah, the former sailor, reported similar events. Phantom soldiers appearing at dead hours, marching with perfect cadence, doors rattling, lamps swinging, yet no one there when investigated. Letters to family described drums, whispered names. The rhythm of the regiment persistent, unbroken, unexplainable, corroborated only by fog and fear. And the Lady of the Mist. Folklore insisted she lingered here, her white dress flowing, feet hovering above cobblestones, gliding silently, stopping at doorways, peering into windows, sometimes weeping, sometimes smiling, and always warning. Fact or folklore, she existed in both, in the ledger of sightings, in whispered stories, in the air itself. The confrontation escalated. Eliza's heart racing, lanterns swaying in wind, shadows twisting, footsteps echoing, and a soft melody, carried from somewhere unseen, blending with wind and fog. Ghostly, haunting, recognizable, yet impossible. The city holding it all, preserving it, layering incident upon incident, story upon story. Across the square, a child's voice, faint, calling a name, a mother's voice, responding, yet no one present. Windows shuttered, shutters trembling in wind. Reports corroborated in Fact Layer, children missing. Voices heard, no physical presence, a bridge between reality and legend. A tension so palpable, one could feel it pressing against skin and bone. Eliza stepped closer. The figure mirrored, moved just enough her bundle shifted, a faint breath on her neck. She spun. Nothing. The fog consumed, leaving only echo, only memory, only fear. A rhythm established, the streets holding her, teaching her, warning her, Fact blending with folklore, layering tension, escalating, inexorable. The fog lifted slightly, revealing shapes in alleys, figures, transient, partially formed, some tall, some small, some unmistakably human, some not, each moving with purpose, yet inscrutable. A pattern emerging, a map of the city's memory. Intersections where fact and folklore collided, where incidents coalesced. A choreography of the unseen. The local constable's ledger recorded only fragments. Observations noted, dismissed. Handwriting trembling. Unexplained phenomena. Shadows. Children. Soldiers. No evidence. And yet, stories persisted, carried by word of mouth, by memory, by the streets themselves. Each new encounter, adding depth, adding weight, adding rhythm. Eliza froze, eyes fixed on a shadow slipping across the square, lantern light catching, briefly, revealing, not fully, a shape, human-like, yet altered, ghostly. She remembered tales of the children, the soldiers, the lady, all converging, all lingering, all waiting. And in that moment, she understood. The confrontation was not a single event. It was a pattern, a pulse, a test, a bridge between past and present. And then it moved. The figure, closer, steps measured, deliberate, brushing past a barrel, a doorway, a wall, and she could feel it. The air thick with expectation, with history, with the breath of those who had disappeared. Fact and folklore intertwined, teaching, warning, beckoning. Lanterns flickered, fog shifted, shadows danced. A low whisper, carried from alley to alley. Do not forget. Do not forget. Repeated, overlapping, echoing. The city itself speaking, demanding attention, acknowledgement, a witness, a participant. Eliza's heartbeat synced with the rhythm, the pulse, the crescendo of events converging. By midnight, the streets quieted, the fog hanging, still, thick, lanterns dim. Yet the presence, the rhythm, the tension lingered. Reminders of the city's memory, of the people vanished, of incidents unresolved. The convergence of fact and folklore marking a turning point, the first confrontation, a set piece, a pivotal moment, teaching the living, holding the dead. Charleston alive with its stories, its shadows, its pulse, and you, the observer, the listener, stepping into this narrative, are now part of the rhythm, breathing it, feeling it. The streets, the fog, the lamplight, carrying the memory, the warning, the presence, holding tension, awaiting the next incident, the next echo, the next unfolding, the city alive, aware, and never forgetting. Night had settled like a velvet curtain over Charleston, the fog curling along King Street, threading through alleyways, clinging to the wrought iron balconies. And in that obscured silence, the city held its breath. Every brick, every shutter, every cobblestone, vibrating with memory. Fact records indicate multiple witnesses reported unusual phenomena simultaneously. Soldiers on patrol, children disappearing, women walking alone, shadows moving in impossible patterns. Reports filed with the Bureau, meticulously noted. Phenomenon repeated, unexplained. Fate unknown. multiple locations, corroborated by civilian testimony. Yet these reports, shelved, archived, forgotten, except for those who remembered. Eliza, her shawl wrapped tight. Footsteps, tentative, moved through the fog once more, the alleys whispering her name. Faint echoes. Like voices caught in the mist, she passed a doorway. Dim lamplight spilling across wet cobblestones. And there, a figure, hovering at the edge of perception. Translucent, shifting, unmoving, yet somehow present. Folklore speaks of this moment, a bridge between past and present, a convergence of incidents long thought separate. The Lady of the Mist gliding along the river, phantom soldiers marching silently through the streets, vanished children appearing briefly at corners, all threads of a single tapestry, a rhythm repeating itself across time, teaching, warning, demanding witness. Eliza froze, the figure moving closer, her breath caught, the air thick with the scent of burnt cane, faint smoke, metallic tang of old blood, the pulse of history thrumming in her chest, fact and folklore intertwined. She could not distinguish, could not separate reality from legend. Yet the fear was real, undeniable, palpable. Reports from other witnesses corroborate the convergence. Mr. Samuel, a soldier, described the Phantom Regiment marching past Market Street. The sound of drums, boots striking cobblestone, voices calling names of the long dead, observed by multiple individuals, yet unseen when authorities investigated. Letters sent to family, ink smudged by rain, handwriting trembling. They march, still, even in fog. Fact layer confirming folklore whispers, rhythm of incidents escalating. A child's laughter echoed down Trad Street, high thin, carried by wind, mingling with distant whispers. And then, silence, broken only by Eliza's heartbeat. A low whistle from the river, matching the cadence of phantom soldiers. She sensed movement at the corner, small, deliberate, translucent. A boy, vanished from records, appearing, warning, pleading. She dared not approach, yet she could not look away. The fog shifted, thickened, curling around lamplight. Shadows dancing along brick walls. Every step taken by Eliza mirrored, yet not subtle, almost imperceptible. The air quivered, the pulse of the city palpable. Time stretched, elongated, moments suspended between reality and dream. Fact and folklore layered, history bleeding into legend, legend seeping into memory. Across the square, Mrs. Lydia, the laundress, recalled the night her son vanished. Letters sent, reports filed. Fate unknown, inked in bureaucratic precision. Yet in her parlor, whispers continued. Shadows moving along walls. The soft scrape of steps, music from a distant piano. Melodies familiar, yet distorted. Voices of children long gone. Warning, beckoning, pleading. Do not forget. Do not forget. Elijah, the former sailor, walking the docks, felt it most keenly. Drums in the distance, shadows aligning, ghostly formations marching along piers, figures rising from fog, each movement precise, impossible, and yet undeniable. Lantern light flickered, caught a silhouette, vanished, leaving only echo, only rhythm, only memory. Folklore tells of another layer, the ghosts of Charleston's past freedmen, children, soldiers, all converging, manifesting simultaneously. The city itself a stage, streets as script, alleys as prologue and epilogue. each incident building upon another, escalating tension, a crescendo approaching, a climax poised in the mist. Eliza stepped forward, the figure at the corner, moving in tandem, steps synchronized, the fog thickening, her breath visible. Every inhalation, every exhalation, syncing with the rhythm. The city holding her in place, teaching her, warning her, pulling her deeper into its memory, into its past. A child's voice, faint, high-pitched, calling for a parent, echoes of nursery rhymes, layered over the sound of phantom drums. An invisible regiment marching past cobblestones, doors rattling, lamps swinging, shadows converging, the pulse quickening. Eliza felt herself swept into the rhythm, fact and folklore colliding, unstoppable, immersive, consuming. The Lady of the Mist appeared, drifting along the riverbank, dress flowing, feet not touching ground, moving silently, eyes fixed, watching. She paused, glanced toward Eliza, and vanished, leaving only the scent of smoke and sugar, a whisper of melody. Do not forget, the words carried by wind, through streets, alleys, across time. Reports confirm simultaneous incidents, multiple witnesses, soldiers, civilians, children, elderly, all describing overlapping events, inexplicable, yet consistent, documented, and yet ignored, dismissed. The rhythm of events undeniable, layering tension, escalating anticipation, pushing toward climax. Eliza reached the corner. Figure mirrored her. Steps in sync. The fog swirling. Shadows deepening. Lanterns dimming. She realized the city itself was breathing. Alive. A living record. Absorbing every incident. Every whisper. Every disappearance. Every phantom step. A memory etched into stone. Into brick. Into fog. Into the hearts of those present. And then, the air shifted. A low murmur, carried from alley to alley, whispers overlapping, voices of children, soldiers, women, the lady, merging, crescendo building, tension reaching its peak. Every witness, every observer, ensnared, a convergence of fact and folklore, of history and legend, the city itself as conductor, orchestrating the unseen. The fog thinned, revealing shapes, fleeting, shifting, translucent. The lady, children, soldiers, all present, all absent, every step deliberate, measured, echoing in the mind, rhythm of the city, palpable, unstoppable, teaching, warning, claiming witness, asserting presence, fact and folklore, indistinguishable. The climax, realized, imminent, undeniable. By midnight, Charleston held its breath. The incidents converged, the fog clinging, lantern light trembling, shadows dancing, whispers overlapping, melodies distorted, steps echoing. A city alive with memory, with presence, with history, with legend. A bridge between past and present, between the living and the vanished. Every alley, every street, every brick, resonating with the pulse of events. The climax reached, the bridge complete. Eliza, frozen, enveloped by fog, enveloped by memory, enveloped by the rhythm of the city. Breaths shallow, heartbeat aligned with pulse of the streets. The lady vanished. Phantom soldiers disappeared, children faded, yet the echo, the presence, remained. Fact and folklore layered, Tension maintained. Climax realized, leaving a residue of fear, of awe, of remembrance. The city alive. Still. And you? The witness, the listener, the observer. Now feel it too. The pulse, the rhythm, the climax of Charleston. 1868. Streets alive with echoes, shadows, whispers, legend, fact, memory, presence, absence, all converging, all resonating, all demanding recognition, acknowledgement, understanding. The dawn rose slowly over Charleston, mist lingering like a memory that refused to leave. Streets wet, cobblestones glistening, shadows long. And yet, the city felt emptier, quieter, but not silent. The pulse, the rhythm, still there, beneath the boards, beneath the bricks, beneath the fog. Fact records show only fragments of what occurred. Petitions filed, missing children, phantom regiments, eyewitness accounts, letters preserved, some dismissed, some forgotten, but the pattern remains. Incidents layered upon one another, a rhythm repeated, documented, partially explained, mostly unresolved. Fate unknown, scrawled in ink, repeated in ledger after ledger, every notation a testament, every absence a witness. Folklore insists that the Lady of the Mist still drifts along the riverbanks, her gown brushing the water, feet never touching the ground. Children appear at street corners, transient, fleeting, glimpsed only briefly. Whispers of soldiers echo through the market. Drumbeats unheard by most, yet present, felt, remembered. The city itself a stage, the streets a script, alleys as prologue and epilogue. Fact and folklore intertwined, inseparable. Residents still spoke of the vanished, a mother recounting a child who disappeared, a soldier remembering phantom comrades, a laundress describing a translucent figure. Yet all hesitated, voices hushed, glances toward corners, toward shadows, toward alleys, aware, too aware, that speaking aloud might solidify the presence. Fact colliding with folklore, each reinforcing the other, leaving a residue of fear and awe. The Market Street clock ticked, a reminder of time passing. Yet some things never change. The echoes of the disappeared, the rhythm of footsteps long gone, the subtle scent of burnt sugar carried by the wind, all still present, invisible, almost tangible. The city a living archive of sorrow, memory, and legend. Eliza, her shawl wrapped tighter than ever, footsteps cautious, eyes scanning the alleys. She had walked these streets countless times, yet each time felt new, alive, haunted. Each encounter a reminder that the city never forgets. The pulse persists, the rhythm continues, and she, a witness, a participant, carried it within her. Fact layer shows other traces surviving through decades. Letters stored in archives, newspapers reporting fate unknown, maps noting areas of repeated incidents, reports of spectral soldiers, children appearing and disappearing, minor mentions in diaries, often overlooked, yet collectively undeniable, a pattern, a presence, proof, silent, patient, persistent. Folklore layer carries the same weight. Stories handed down orally, ghostly whispers repeated in homes. Tales of the Lady of the Mist, phantom soldiers, vanished children, melodies lingering in empty courtyards, rhythmic footsteps echoing in alleys, the city alive with memory, a community's shared consciousness, passing from one generation to the next, never fully explained, never fully forgotten. By the harbor, fog rolled in, brushing against piers, reflecting lanterns, waves lapping with an almost human sigh. Fishermen whispered of figures appearing along the docks, a small child standing silently, a soldier gliding past, a woman in white, gone in an instant. And yet, present, the pulse, the rhythm, the city breathing, carrying memory, carrying story, even the buildings. Scarred by war, charred from plantation fires, held traces, windows creaking, shutters swinging, floorboards groaning, every brick soaked with memory, fact and folklore imprinted, inseparable, layering tension, carrying echoes, leaving questions, unfinished, unresolved, alive in the present. Visitors walking the streets today, unaware, yet sensitive, report chills, glimpses of figures, faint laughter, whispers, the lady, children, phantom soldiers, the rhythm, the pulse, all persistent. A reminder, the past never truly ends. The city's memory continues, waiting for acknowledgement, witness, participation. Charleston, 1868. A city of incidents, a city alive, carrying fact, carrying folklore, carrying echoes, and the streets themselves, telling stories for those who would listen, who would pay attention, who would walk slowly, breathe, feel, understand. And now, after hours of listening, following the rhythm, witnessing the incidents, stepping through alleys and shadows, you, the observer, are left with questions, fragments of stories, whispers, images, melodies, echoes, and the sense, the undeniable sense that the city is still alive, watching, remembering, waiting. No one can say how many disappeared, how many were lost, how many stories remain untold. Fact: records are incomplete, folklore persistent, overlapping, each layer reinforcing the other, teaching, warning, beckoning, the city a living testament, and the rhythm, the pulse, continues, even now. So pause, take a breath, let the echoes linger, the fog swirl, the lamplight flicker in your imagination. Charleston does not forget, and neither do its people. The stories persist, unfinished, unresolved, yet alive, inviting, compelling, haunting. And as you step back, as you leave the streets, remember, the pulse remains, the rhythm continues, children vanish, soldiers march, the lady drifts, the fog moves, and the city waits. You have just walked through a story that never fully ends, a rhythm that never ceases, a city that remembers. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you will hear it too. You just heard a record of history that never closes, a memory the city keeps alive, its rhythm, its pulse, its shadow. And if you linger, if you return, if you pay attention, perhaps you will witness what Charleston refuses to forget. And for now, all that remains are echoes, unanswered questions, the fog, the shadows, the rhythm of a city alive with memory, with fact, with folklore, and with stories that will never truly end.